Hey, Cyrus.
How you doing, G?
Not bad.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the Dark Knight series.
Okay, let's do that.
It's really my favorite series of all time.
Okay.
I get goosebumps every time I watch the Dark
Really?
Knight.
Okay.
And it's, from beginning to end, I think it's masterful.
Sure.
What are some of the reasons why you think it's so great?
I think it's a good modern take on Batman.
Yes.
Very good, smart modern take on based on how the world is today.
Sure.
Because, Batman has gone through many changes. There was the original Adam West version in the 60s. Kind of like the first time Batman became a pop culture phenomenon throughout America.
Sure.
Then in the late 80s, we have the Tim Burton, Batman series,
Sure.
with starring Michael Keaton. And then of course, continuing that series, we had the two Joe Schumacher versions, having Val Kilmer and then George Clooney in the process as Batman.
Right.
And then, of course, somewhere in between that, there's also Batman the Animated Series.
Which is fantastic.
Fantastic. We have to talk about that one of these days. And then I think because of the Joe Schumacher version wasn't that well liked, Batman kind of disappeared from pop culture for several years. And then when they were bringing it back, they realized, okay, let's try to do a more realistic approach.
Yes.
Which brings about the Nolan version.
Best version.
Yeah. Well, in movies, probably.
Yes.
So far. Yeah. Well, there is the upcoming one, Matt Reeves later on this year. So let's see how that turns out.
Well, I'm excited for it.
It's starting to look a little better than before.
Yes. I think it should be good.
Yeah.
So Batman Begins is the first movie in the series.
Yes.
There they just sort of establish who Bruce Wayne is,
yes.
His tragic backstory, and they try to establish why he's doing what he's doing.
Yes.
I think they do a good job of all
Well,
of
I
that.
think it's the first Batman series, even including the animated one, the pop culture version, that actually shows how he becomes Batman.
Yes.
Actually go through the process. Because the Adam West one, I don't think they ever did an episode. That Batman Animated Series, when we started out, he's Batman already. Burton one kind of touched upon a little bit, just shows his parents were killed by criminals, but then don't really show in the process how he becomes Batman, how he got his equipment and all that kind of stuff. And Nolan version was the first one that really says, okay, where'd he get the suit? Where'd he get his Batmobile? How is he getting the finance and the money and make it all happen? There was a little bit more thought put into that. And it was kind of exciting. It was really kind of, I remember seeing it in the theater for the first time. It was kind of like, this kind of stuff kind of makes sense.
Right. I remember the first time I saw that movie, I was with my dad, and we were watching it on TV.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that it was a Batman movie at the beginning.
Yes.
And when you finally put on the suit, and you're like, oh, I see, I believe this. This is very strong.
Sure. I think what made us go so good was I would say the first act of him he's not Batman. He's just Bruce Wayne traveling around feeling conflicted about everything.
Yes.
Whether he wants to do this or not, because he's kind of being pulled in different directions. He hasn't fully formed what his idea of justice is. Even he was searching for the idea of justice.
Right. That's exactly right.
But he had the wrong idea. He really just wanted revenge.
Yes.
And there was that involved. So they went through the trouble of developing the character of Bruce Wayne. Very deeply who he is, why he's on this mission. Why he's kind of flawed. He was on a flawed mission to begin with too.
Yeah.
He had all the wrong ideas, and he was learning to become Batman in the process. Even after he put on the suit for the first time and stopped the criminals and tied Falcone to the bat light and created the bat signal that way.
Yes.
Even up to that point, he's still not sure what his real mission is. It was really fascinating in that sense.
Exactly. And so by the end of that first movie, he has a far better understanding of who he is and what his role is.
Yes.
And in the subsequent movies, they hammer that theme out very strongly and nicely.
Yes.
It's not about, what he says that defines him, it's about what he does.
Yes.
And I think that's exactly.
Oh yeah. There was even theme introduced at the end of the first movie, which is escalation. And then you saw what happened, escalation did take place in Gotham in the following movie.
Yes.
Where it's not just, okay, he's Batman now and there's another costume freak. There was also the whole city was starting to go into overdrive, where the criminals wants him dead, and the criminals are behaving erratically. There was also the citizens who start to dress up as Batman, going down the street, serving their own justice. So the escalation was very smartly portrayed too.
Yes.
It wasn't just like, now he's Batman, suddenly there's villains now. There's all sorts of stuff happening. The police has to escalate. the law enforcement has to escalate.
It's also that he's self-aware about his effect on the city
Yes.
and the kinds of things that he has to do.
Oh,
in
yeah.
that subsequent movie, The Dark Knight, he's aware that he can't do this forever and that he eventually has to pass it off to someone that's legitimate, that doesn't wear a mask and operates in the daytime.
Oh yeah.
Because that's the only way in which people can, buy into it.
Sure.
And it will discourage other people from trying to do what he does.
Yes. Which is interesting because sort of by the end of the first one, the Batman Begins, he kind of understood what justice is. He finally realized, okay, justice is not about just randomly killing somebody. Like because earlier on he wanted to kill the guy who killed, not Falcone, the guy who killed his parents. He had a gun. He was going to go to the courthouse and shoot the guy.
You're right.
But what I thought that scene was brilliant was when he was about to do that, somebody else shot the guy, and it robbed him of that revenge, and he suddenly didn't know what to do anymore. So he needed to find something else to fill that void.
Right.
And then by the end, he understood what justice is. Trying to rise above everything, trying to become sort of a symbol. But he wasn't sure what that symbol was.
Yes.
Which is where they continue in the second one when he realized, okay, I cannot be fighting in the dark. I cannot be the symbol. We need to have a white knight, which is Harvey Dent, and that idea starts to rise up too in the process.
And then when you look at the second movie and sort of how the characters that define it are all necessary for the plot. Between Rachel, Harvey Dent, the Joker, Batman, Lucius, and Alfred, all of those characters are integral to how the story proceeds.
Oh yeah. Multiple characters, multiple conflict.
Yes.
Multiple problems and things that have to resolve in the process. And I remember watching that in the theater. You really had no idea where it was going.
It shocks you.
Yeah.
They take risks.
Oh yeah, because you most of the time when you look at something like a superhero movie, you kind of know the 3-act structure.
Yes.
Batman falls into that, but it's not your typical, because the actions and the resolution are not the usual you take, and it kind of constantly surprise you where they're going with it. It really was taking comic book element and kind of elevating it.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that happens. Most of the time I go see a superhero movie, I come out and go, it falls short what the comic books try to portray. I think the only 2 times that I go, oh my God, that was actually better than the comic book was the second X-Men movie being one of them. And then Dark Knight was the first time you go, ooh, that kind of elevated beyond what the source material was. Very rare. But that's somebody who kind of understands the source material, but has his own clear idea and vision, and says, where do I want to take these basic concepts and go far, far, far with it.
Well, let's think about the Joker, for example.
Yes.
The reason why he exists in the first place in this capacity is because normal criminals couldn't handle Batman.
Yes.
And one of the things that he's really effective at doing is that he actually challenges the structure that's in place, the current world order.
Yes.
And so, when they're trying to put everyone on trial, he goes after the judges and he goes after the police in a creative and unique way.
Sure.
And that actually is a real act of terrorism. He destabilizes the structure.
Yes.
And really challenges Batman to figure out how can he hand it off to someone else when someone like this exists in the world.
Yes.
That sort of is anti the system that's in place.
Well, I remember, I think the 2 Nolan Batman movie, Dark Knight and Batman Begins, was the first time I clearly understood what is it that makes them super villains. Because one of the interesting thing about both movies is that Batman and Gordon wants to take down the mob. That was their goal, throughout the entire beginning of each movies. Kind of like, we got to take down the mob, take out Falcone, we take out, all the mobsters that's involved. That's kind of creating all this corruption in the city. But what was interesting is if you really examine the movies, Gordon and Batman didn't do that. It was in the first one, it was Scarecrow that took out Falcone.
Yes.
That's why I go, oh, he's a super villain, because he was able to take out your villain. He was above all of that. And the second one, it was the same thing. It was the Joker and Two-Face that took out the mob. And you kind of go, that's interesting. Whereas I've never seen in any of superhero movies or TV show portray as why they're supervillains. It's not because they have superpowers or anything. It's because they are a cut above your normal villains.
Yes.
So I thought that was fascinating to watch. It was kind of like, the first time somebody clearly defined why they're super villains in that sense. And then the other thing I remember was, I have a friend who used to kind of, joke about Batman villains. He goes, "Why is Batman, with all his gadget and wealth, having so much problem fighting guys in suits and neckties?" Which is true, because that's really most Batman villains are. They're just characters in suits and neckties. You know, and he goes, "Why?" He goes, "The Joker just guy in a purple suit. Why couldn't Batman just take him out with a punch? I don't understand that." And even when you even watch the old Tim Burton version, you kind of go, "Yeah, why is he not able to beat the Jack Nicholson Joker?" You know, and with his high tech Batwing, he fired missiles and bullets, and he still miss him. And then, Nicholson Joker pulled out this long gun, funny looking gun, and shot down the Batplane with which is low tech stuff.
Right.
You kind of go,
"That's not quite right."
That doesn't make any sense. But in the Dark Knight movie, when they have the Joker, both Joker and Two-Face, because they were insane,
yes,
their actions could not be predicted, and that's why Batman has a hard time stopping them. It was really the first time I kind of go, "Ooh, this makes sense to me." Why? Because Batman think, "Oh, criminal has a pattern." These characters don't follow a pattern anymore.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
He bases his entire psychology off of what criminals think, and he tries to base his symbol off of what scares him and what he thinks will scare those criminals. And what makes all of these supervillains super is that they have some kind of edge on Batman in some shape, form, or fashion.
That they're not the normal type of criminals.
Exactly.
He's dealing with.
Scarecrow, he has a psychological advantage over him. Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, however you say it. Yep. He has, strength on his side. He's a more advanced version of him. On top of that, he also...
he has an army.
Exactly.
Yes. He wasn't one man.
The Joker, he's unpredictable. He's incredibly hard to figure out what he's actually going after. He uses misdirection.
Yes. And then Two-Face kind of forms the fact that this was his friend that he tried to help.
Yes.
So there's some hesitation about going after him
at
the same time, because he feel there's kind of like he felt like he owes him something. There's a sadness to that.
Not to mention the fact that he was trying to raise him up to a higher level and make him something greater than what he was trying to be.
Yes.
And so because he was constantly getting chopped at, that was really something that was difficult.
Yeah. So there's also a conflict on different levels. But then you have villains that really are above all of that he has to deal with.
Yes.
And I remember the same friend who used to hate Batman villains came back from seeing that movie. He goes, "Okay, the DC Joker has to go now.
Yes.
This is something we've never seen before." And I think that was kind of the reaction to a lot of people who saw that movie at the time. Like, you couldn't believe what you saw on screen. They portray superhero very realistically.
Yes.
They portray the scenarios very, very smartly.
Yes.
And your villains were beyond your expectation of why they're able to kind of throw the city into chaos, and your hero who's got all the resources can't stop him.
Yes.
But that's good, smart writing. That's writing conflicts above. Probably, I think most audience would imagine how they could deal with the situation, and then go beyond that and give you a good resolution. And then I think the smartest thing about the Dark Knight was at the end it fully defined what the Dark Knight is.
Yes.
As opposed to just being, okay, he's Batman, he's wearing black, and he's kind of like a knight doing justice. But at the end, it kind of elevated that by using the term the White Knight, trying to say, okay, here's justice, that we try to do the right way. But at the end, there was a recognition of, justice sometimes can only be done even kind of under the table, and Batman taking on the mantle of a criminal that may have killed Harvey Dent. He became the Dark Knight in that elevated sense. He's not even just a superficial way anymore. He's a little bit more above your normal superhero in that sense.
Right, and that's essentially what makes him super, is that he's able to do things that normal people can't.
Yes.
He can make the structure stable in ways that other people weren't able to even dream of doing.
Yes, yeah. So it was just fascinating movie to watch. And there was talk about movies should get an Oscar and all that stuff. And it really was the best movie of the year.
Yes.
Really, there's nothing else that came to that kind of level of executing something like that.
Yes.
Taking very simple comic book material and elevate it to a point where this is be above and beyond a real movie.
Sure.
That examines things on different level.
Mm-hmm. And then there's The Dark Knight Rises,
yes,
which I think is a solid movie, all things considered. They were building the entire series towards one direction, and then Heath Ledger dies.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, because you kind of know Heath Ledger's Joker would be in the third one if he didn't have that accident.
Right.
And it's a shame, because you can tell they had to kind of write around it.
Yes.
And which is why a lot of people didn't really put it above the Dark Knight. And it's true, Dark Knight kind of peaked, and without having that character kind of push it one step further, it can only go down a notch.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I have problems with that movie too. When I saw it, you know, I there's things I liked, and there are things that go, "Ooh, what missed opportunity that turned out to be."
Right. But overall, I feel like they were able to, make the best out of the situation that they had.
Sure.
There were a few missteps, like you said, but overall, I really appreciated it. I loved how they portrayed Bane in the story.
Sure.
I thought he was a very strong character to deal with. The
Yes.
fact that this is the first time in which Batman was just completely physically overpowered by someone.
Yes.
And he couldn't just intimidate them the normal way.
Yes, kind of like the Joker, overpower them psychologically in the second one.
Yes.
They do a physical villain that can overpower them, in muscles and strength.
Yes.
Which I think was great.
Yes.
But of course, in terms of writing, the psychological aspect is always more compelling when you can execute it properly.
Right, I would agree. But then he did have to deal with the psychological turmoil of being sent to a far-off country.
Yes.
While Bane now controls the city.
Yes.
And so there were automatic stakes built into that kind of story.
Sure. But the I think the biggest problem a lot of people had with the third movie as opposed to the second one is the second one portrayed Gotham in really such a realistic fashion.
Yeah.
They even stripped away some of the stuff that was kind of a fancy element in the first one. Like you don't have that monorail anymore in the city, and everything just looks like Chicago.
Yeah.
It looks really, really believable that that's a real city.
Yeah.
But then by the third one, I felt like there were, fantasy and even fairy tale elements that's got woven into it.
Sure.
Where how did he get back to the city after he was exiled? We didn't really know. Because his whole city was on the lockdown. Well, sure, he's Batman, he can do it, whatever. But there was that kind of element that's not clearly defined. There was also kind of the surreal part of the police officer being trapped on the ground for 3 months, and then you have to get back into action immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
And and their uniform looks clean.
Mm-hmm.
How's the other problem I had with
Right.
that too? He had his bat, flying device. I forgot what it's called, on top of the building.
The Batwing, yeah.
That wasn't a Batwing. It was something else. It's called something else.
Okay.
Yeah, but he had it on top, just on top of a rooftop with a tarp over it, and
Right.
nobody ever saw that in the past 3 months.
Right.
Like there were weirder elements in there and go, oh, that feels like something that Nolan would not so easily just kind of give into. But it was kind of like, let's just make it happen because it's a superhero movie.
Right. And then Miranda Tate was probably my biggest issue with sort of how she was introduced all of a sudden as Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Yeah.
And then subsequently her death. I'm like, that was the worst death I've seen in the movie in a while.
Like I said, the resolution to a lot of things wasn't very clear defined. And I personally had a problem at the end where just Batman just kind of ran off with Selena Kyle.
You're right.
Because that felt so very un-Batman.
Yes.
And the same friend who who talked about the not liking Joker and all that kind of stuff. He even said, he goes, Batman don't stop because crime don't stop.
That's exactly
So he would
right.
just suddenly give it up. You're like, that doesn't make any sense anymore.
You wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So that was those. So there was a lot of things you couldn't go. I understand what he's trying to do at the end, because at the end of Batman Begins, he talks about maybe one day I don't have to wear this mask anymore. I can just kind of move on. There was hope about him not being Batman anymore.
Right, and that was crushed in the second movie.
Kind of crushed, but then at the same time, Nolan still want to follow through that at the end. That's why he's kind of out there in a cafe with Selena Kyle, waving to Alfred.
Right, but they didn't solve the crime issue at the end of the day. Sure, they took care of
Well,
Bane,
they kind of put the Robin character in charge at the end, which I did like how it ended, where he was walking the Batcave, and then the platform started elevating, and then you see the word Batman, Dark Knight Rises, and you're like, okay, that means that, because somebody else is rising to the occasion to become Batman at that point.
Right.
Which I think on some level it's fine, but it felt very odd, because if you look at real timeline, Bruce Wayne was Batman for maybe just a year and a half, really, and then the last 6, 7, 8 days as Batman. Mm-hmm. So it felt very strange in that sense.
Right.
See, I originally thought when they say Dark Knight Rises, I thought, okay, finally, the end of this trilogy is him finally become the Batman we know. Mm-hmm. He gets the Batcave, he has all that stuff, and he's on his endless crusade at the end. Maybe at the end it's just him in the cave with bats flying around, he's looking at the monitor and seeing all this stuff. He goes, okay, I need to take care of this tonight.
Right, but that's not how it ended.
That's not how it ended. It was like him in a cafe,
right,
with a girl.
Not quite.
Not really right. So I would have liked it where at the end he's a fully formed Batman.
Right.
And he's just on this continuous crusade. He becomes that. And there's the tragedy of him can never go back to being Bruce Wayne anymore because he's suffered too much loss, and he realizes I cannot. You can't even say, yeah, I stopped being Batman for like many years in the beginning of Dark Knight Rises. Remember, he gave up being Batman. He went to hiding.
Right.
But then he realizes at the end, I cannot go into hiding anymore. I need to be Batman all the time.
Sure, and I mean, think about Spider-Man and sort of what they did with the Raimi series.
Sure.
When he had to reject Mary Jane in order to decide to become
Yeah.
Spider-Man full-time.
Sure.
That's the moral decision that I think he should
That's what it should have been. But you could at the same time show him sitting in the cave and it's, the Robin character comes in Robin costume saying, but I'm here to help you, Bruce. And how exciting would that have been?
Right.
It ends up with him actually as Batman and Robin.
Yes.
Like the Dark Knight Rises at the end. The trilogy about him become the Batman we know in pop culture.
Sure.
I think would have been a much more exciting ending.
Absolutely. But for all things considered, I still think it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed it. And even the third movie, I think, has some of the best scenes in the entire trilogy.
No, there's no doubt. They put a lot of effort in making sure how that movie looks and all that kind of stuff. That's great.
Right. And then even if you think about the fight scene between him and Bane the first time.
Sure.
You hear about what the director did to really put it from the perspective of Batman having to fight, from Bane. And so you can almost see the speed and strength of Batman.
Yeah.
And the pacing is great.
Oh, no, it's great. I remember seeing the theory, like, ooh, this is good. This is awesome. So there's, it's just that I think the very, very end solution presented didn't truly elevate the character.
Yes.
It kind of took a step down. You kind of go, oh, I wish a little bit more than that, But hey, it is what it is. Let's hope that the next Batman series could be just as exciting. The one that's coming out with Matt Reeves series.
Because here's the other thing too. It wouldn't have even been inconsistent with what Alfred was asking for the character. It could have really shown that that's not possible because he was saying, I hope to one day, see you in Paris, sitting at a table at the other side of the way. Yeah,
but then you could also elevate that at the end. Alfred says, I realize that was a dream of mine, but that's not the right path for you. And I'm willing to be here to fully support you. You kind of want the end where he's just there in the cave with Robin and Alfred, the way you knew it, that's supporting him. So he's no longer alone anymore.
Yes.
He's got some people that really want to put their faith and trust into him. And I would have think that would have been great.
That would have been good. But that's not what we got. But
I
still love the series. I still will watch it at least once a year.
Sure.
And I think it's very strong. So I think that's good for now. I think that's pretty much
Sure.
it. Thanks guys for watching the video. We appreciate you and hope you have a good day.
Yeah.